Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives. Well, we finished looking at the second Edge of Spider-Verse miniseries, so I think it's time we finally look at the storyline that it was building up to. As today, ladies and gentlemen, we're finally going to be taking a look at the end of the Spider-Verse storyline. Side note, I think this cover's kind of dumb. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad cover. After all, the story of End of the Spider-Verse is told within the pages of the Spider-Man comics. It's just that, well, this story was advertised as the third Spider-Verse story in the trilogy. I guess we're just not counting the miniseries with Miles. But the thing is, every other cover that we've seen for a Spider-Verse trade has typically looked a lot more grand, at least kind of showcasing the whole Spider-Verse side of the storyline. So like for example, the Spider-Verse trade, that big ass one, featured Spider-Man as well as all the other Spideys of Earth 616 plus a couple extras, I think, just kind of posing and proposing kind of mystifyingly in front of buildings. And then likewise, or if you wanted to go with like the individual trades that they did in the Amazing Spider-Man, there was one of all the various Spideys leaping into action. For Spider-Geddon, we saw a bunch of Spideys just leaping into action and all surrounding the entire cover. Or in the Miles Morales one, the cover for that trade featured Miles at the forefront, while a bunch of Spideys behind him, some appearing in the miniseries, some not, just getting great, just all looking imposing dramatically. Hell, even Venomverse and the Gwenverse, even the Venomverse and Gwenverse stories kind of did similar things. As the cover for the Venomverse miniseries showcased Venom leaping into action, while all the Venomized superheroes surrounding him joined him. And then likewise for Gwenverse, we saw Spider-Gwen leaping in as her time-displaced variants were all jumping in with her. This, on the other hand, is just a generic shot of Spider-Man posing dramatically, and it's not a bad image, for after all, it is told in the pages of the Spider-Man comics, so of course it makes sense why they would have it, why the cover for said comics would feature, well, Spider-Man. It's just that for the next Spider-Verse story, it just kind of feels lesser, is what I'm saying. Not awful, it doesn't feel like it's appropriate for the story that it's heralding. But whatever. But either way, that's just kind of my own criticism. Either way, though, end of the Spider-Verse. So yeah, when I first heard about this story, you could bet your ass that I was excited. After all, I have made it no secret that I eat and drink Spider-Verse, and while I am kind of the argument that maybe Spider-Verse does need to be kind of pulled back a little. Maybe Marvel could focus on other things that have nothing to do with Spider-Verse. And by that same token, I will happily grab anything that has the Spider-Verse logo plastered on it. Why? Because I just love Spider-Verse. I love seeing all these different versions of Spidey come together. I love seeing all these different interpretations of the tale. I love seeing the stories and what they have to do when they come together. Again, I love it. Sometimes the Spider-Verse formula is applied to other characters, like with Venom in Venomverse or Gwen in Gwenverse, but on the whole, it's still fun to see all these different variations of the same character coming together and kicking ass, even if I do feel like that maybe they could rein it in a little. With that said, I was happily looking forward to End of the Spider-Verse, especially with having read the previous Edge of Spider-Verse miniseries and the gaggle of new Spideys they introduced in that. So I kind of was excited, and I was like, I was very much looking forward to getting this book, even happily pre-ordered it like with other ones. So, is it any good? Is this more than worthy of still continuing on the Spider-Verse name? Well, let's take a look at it and find out as we kick off into the Spider-Verse by taking a look at Spider-Man Volume 4, Number 1. And the story actually begins with Peter on his way to work when suddenly he gets called by his boss, and his boss is Norman Osborn. So yeah, I should probably kind of explain this. At the point in time that this comic took place, well, Norman Osborn had turned over a new leaf. So much like with how Otto Octavius tried to abandon his villainous ways and become the superior Spider-Man once upon a time, Norman Osborn had decided that he wanted to actually turn over a new leaf himself and try to becoming a good person. And like with Otto, it wasn't an act. He wasn't doing it to garner positive attention while he had some evil scheme operating in the background. No. He genuinely meant what he was doing. He wanted to try and turn over a new leaf and become a better person. And as a result, he wound up abandoning the Green Goblin persona and wound up taking a new, more heroic one called the Gold Goblin, who didn't really have the Goblin motif anymore. If anything, the only reason he was called the Gold Goblin is because it was Norman Osborn in the suit, and he still used all of his Goblin tech to utilize it. But ultimately, it was more just less a gold suit. But bottom line, Norman Osborn was genuinely trying to turn over a new leaf, and to try and bury the hatchet with Peter, he wound up hiring him on to Oscorp, and, well, gave Spider-Man corporate backing, so to speak. He designed Peter a brand new suit that'd be able to help him in his spider duties, and likewise, he even gave him a new well, technological backpack called Bug. That's essentially supposed to be meant to be like a robotic assistant for Peter whenever he needs help. And honestly, I haven't really been reading the main Amazing Spider-Man stories, mostly because of Zeb Wells' work there. But I'll say this: I'm okay with the status quo change. For one thing, I like seeing Spider-Man being able to build up his repertoire, and while I might be in the minority when it comes to this, I actually liked when Peter was the CEO of his own company, as it helped show that he was getting ahead in the world and utilizing his technological know-how to improve his repertoire as both Peter Parker and Spider-Man. So to kind of see that replicated here with Norman Osborn backing Peter up rather than having Peter be a CEO, I like it. And I'll give credit where it's due. Let me see if I can actually find his suit here. So hold on, I need to actually get a good shot of it. I do actually like the suit that he got when he was working under Norman, as it was essentially just the standard Spider-Man suit, but with a few technological doodads. Plus, I do kind of like the idea of Spider-Man having his own robotic assistant. On top of that, I like the idea of Norman Osborn turning over a new leaf. After all, I'm a sucker for redemption arc stories. That's part of the reason why the Superior Spider-Man is one of my favorite incarnations of the Web Slinger, because at its core, it's meant to actually tell the tale of a former supervillain trying to turn his life around and do good. And that's a similar case here we have with Norman and the Gold Goblin. He wants to put his past behind him and actually try and go on to become a better future. Of course, sometimes his misdeeds do come back to haunt him, because he still did a lot of horrible shit as the Green Goblin, but at the very least, I like that he's actively trying to put his best foot forward and try and make up for the wrongs that he once did. But either way, yeah, that's my thoughts on that aside. The reason why Peter's getting a call from Norman is because an Oscorp truck has been hijacked, and it's around where Peter is. And while first Peter gives Norman grief for putting a tracker in his suit, Norman reveals that he actually hasn't done it. He just knows Peter too well. Either way, he asks Peter to take care of it because, well, it's kind of expensive. Plus, it's full of highly sensitive equipment. If it falls in the wrong hands, bad call. And as such, Peter goes into an alley and suits up into his Spidey jammies, and while he's still suiting up, he sends his robotic Bug backpack out to stop the robbers, which, again, I like, as we see the robbers running around the Oscorp truck while being chased by the police, but ultimately the chase is kind of brought to a halt as the Bug pack flies up and manages to land on top of their truck and short it out, causing them to lose control of it, though sadly this also shorts out the brakes, almost hitting a woman and her daughter. Thankfully, Peter's finally suited up as Spidey swings in and saves the pair as the truck ends up crashing. As such, the robbers end up getting out of the car, and while Spidey tries getting everyone to leave the area because, well, these are still armed robbers, and he's a superhero, well, everybody is too stupid to do anything about this, so Peter just says fuck it, and he just starts kicking their asses, which even leads to a funny scene where they call him Spider-Man, but they leave out the hyphen when he says it, and Peter's like, no, you said it too fast, it's Spider-Man with a hyphen, and as he's kicking their asses, he sings an altered version of the Spider-Man thing, but it's called Hyphen Man, but it's just funny, you actually have to read it. But either way, he manages to kick all the robbers' asses until finally they're all on the ground unconscious, and he just webs them to a wall for the police to find. So, all in a day's work. Spidey's just kicked ass, and the gathered crowd is cheering for him. Again, like it when Spider-Man gets respect. However, as this is going on, well, I have to remind you, this is a Spider-Verse story, and as Edge of the Spider-Verse showcased, there is a major threat on the horizon, as the comic cuts to Earth 001, aka Loom World, as we see that Shathra has been a little busy since we last saw her in Edge of Spider-Verse. Basically, with the help of Annie Mae Parker, who's now become her nestling, they've slowly, little by little, been converting the Web of Life and Destiny into her great nest, so to speak. And so with Annie's help, they're able to peek into Earth 616 as they see Spider-Man, well, cheering for the crowds and talking about how he's all awesome and all that crap. And basically, Shathra thinks that now is time to zero in on Peter because apparently, well,
Chandra has continued her assault across the Spideys of the multiverse. And in her words, most of Peter's counterparts have either been converted or killed, meaning that Peter no longer has any major forms of backup. As such, she thinks now is the prime time to strike, as she orders Annie to open a gateway to Earth 616 before Chandra pukes out a whole hive of spider wasps that have gone to ambush Peter. However, this little intrusion does not go unnoticed, as the comic then cuts to another random Earth in the multiverse. This one looking a little older than most other Earths, as it turns out that this Earth is the sanctuary for the Spider Army. As we see Madam Web, Spider UK, and Aranya just sitting in a bell tower as they can sense that Chandra has made her move. As such, realizing that Peter's in danger, Madam Web ends up sending out a psychic call to Earth 616 so that all the spider people on that Earth will go and want to protect Peter. However, even if they send the various Spideys from that Earth to help out Peter Parker, well, this is still Chandra, and odds are that if they all fail, Peter's done for. As such, Spider UK decides that she needs to send someone extra to give Peter backup. And while Madam Web and Aranya asked if she's going to get one of the new recruits, basically Spider UK says no. With something this big, they need to throw in the big guns. And as such, we then cut back to the main Marvel Universe as Spidey is done giving out autographs and signing his name, just pretty much just thinking everything is all good, though the whole reason he's sticking around is because Norman wants him to, get the stolen Oscorp equipment back to Oscorp. He doesn't want the police impounding his stuff. Norman doesn't want the police impounding his stuff. However, before Peter can even jump on that, his spider sense tingles, and sure enough, the portal from Loomworld opens up as the horde of spider wasps flies onto the scene, pretty much just zeroing in on everyone there and trying to sting them. Thankfully, the people are now realizing, okay, this is now a much more serious threat, and they immediately disperse, with Spidey even freeing the robbers that he webbed up because those spider wasps seem to be zeroing in on them as well. As such, Peter is able to outmaneuver most of the spider wasps and even manages to grab one, and well, he recognizes what it is, though it's a little surprising as he doesn't seem to these particular spider wasps don't seem like the ones you would typically see in nature, although it does kind of remind him of something. However, before he can actually zero in on what these spider wasps remind him of, another portal opens. This one looking a little lighter than the one the spider wasps came from. And as Peter looks to see what's coming through, well, it turns out here's where we see more of a connection to previous Spider-Verse stories, as the one that comes through the portal is Morlun. As such, Peter, of course, goes right on the offensive. Why? Because it's fucking Morlun. And if we have established anything in any of the previous Spider-Verse stories, it's that Morlun needs to be dealt with as soon as possible. Because if you don't do something about him, he will wreck your shit, and he will not give you a moment to let up. And that's the mindset that Peter goes into as he starts trying to kick Morlun's ass. Of course, it's still Morlun, and it doesn't really seem to do anything, and he just tries brushing it off and tries to say something to Peter, but again, Peter isn't giving him a single bit of headway as he tries to punch him. Unfortunately, Morlun easily backhands him, and so Peter decides he needs to get some backup, which prompts Bug to jump onto Morlun's chest and try to shock him. Morlun just brushes it off as he just rips Bug off and then crushes the pack right there in his hand, right there, pretty much depraving Peter of one of his tools. As such, he once again tries to talk to Peter as he says they need to talk, they need to discuss something serious, but Peter ain't having any of that shit as he webs up Morlun's mouth, which admittedly is kind of dumb, but whatever. But either way, Spidey just goes in and he just starts wailing on him hard as he can, so much so that his gloves start actually ripping with every single punch, because he knows he can't let up, he can't stop, he has to take this guy down. But at the end, his attacks do nothing, which ironically leads to kind of a humorous panel, as when Spider-Man realizes that his attacks have done jack shit to Morlun, Morlun just kind of stands over him with his hands on his hips, like in a pose that just says, "Now, what did you think that would accomplish?" I don't know why. I find that funny. I just find that funny. But yeah, at this point, Morlun's kind of had it up to here with Peter's crap, and he just starts wailing on Peter, throwing him around, just destroying him, ripping apart his suit. And the entire time, Norman is picking this up on his end and asking Peter what the hell's going on, what's happening to his suit. But eventually, the suit gets so damaged that even the comm link to Norman is cut off, and Peter is just chucked right into a car, basically beaten, bruised, and barely alive. As such, Moreland stands over Peter, looking like he's ready to just kind of get ready to kind of whoop his ass. Before he can deliver a single other punch, well, that's when a gaggle of Spidey shows up, as immediately two web lines come up and stop Moreland's fists, and we see that the only owners of these particular web lines are Cindy Moon, aka Silk, and Miles Morales, aka the other Spider-Man, which I want to bring something up here and now with Miles here. So, we all know that the typical Miles Morales Spider-Man outfit is the black and red costume. You know, with the design like this, red webs, the red spider, and while he has the typical teardrop eye holes, the mask is, the suit is overall black, and the web, like I said, webs are red. So, but much like with Peter, Miles himself has actually gone through at least a handful of other Spider-Man outfits. When he first made his appearance in the Ultimate Universe, he originally ran around in basically a Halloween costume variant of Peter's outfit. And then likewise, when entering the main Marvel Universe, he actually has donned at least his own variations of other Spidey suits. Hell, at one point, he even got his own Iron Spider costume, which admittedly I think is cool. Hell, even now he's even got another cool costume that's based kind of on Blade, as Blade's apparently been acting as a pseudo mentor to him. Which I looked at that costume and it looks kick-ass. So at the time that this story took place, Miles was running around the Marvel Universe not his regular standard Spidey jammies, but in a new costume. And I don't like it. I don't like his other costume. Let's see if I can actually find a good shot of the costume. Yeah, this is was the costume Miles was wearing at the time of this comic. I hate it. I absolutely hate it, which is weird to me because the costume does seem to have the red and black combination, which I normally love. I'm a sucker for red and black, and that's part of the reason why I loved Miles' other Spider-Man outfit. But I hate this one. I mean, I just hate it. It looks so dumb. It doesn't look like an actual Spider-Man costume. It looks like it's a tracksuit with a Spider-Man motif to it. It doesn't look like something a superhero should be wearing. It looks like something that Miles should be going jogging in, and it doesn't really, and as a result, it looks lame. I don't like it. And you know what's the weird thing for me? I think the thing that makes it all look so crappy, in my opinion, is the oversized sweater, because it covers like the bottom half of his mask, it covers his entire torso, and without that sweater, I think I'd probably like the costume. I'm not even kidding. Like, there was actually another comic that I own that starred Miles called What If Miles Morales. And in the fifth issue of that miniseries, Miles teamed up with all the other Miles Moraleses from all the other 4 issues. And during the course of that issue, the tracksuit got ripped. He lost the sweater and wound up just in the standard Spider-Man outfit beneath it. And I'm just gonna be honest here. The costume looked a lot better there because it lacked that one aspect. Without the sweater, it actually looked like kind of a decent Spider-Man outfit. I'll even say this, the red eyes do kind of look cool. It's just that when you include the sweater and then you see those pants there, they don't look like they're all one big superhero outfit. It looks like he just threw on a sweater and track pants and decided to go out running today, and then suddenly he decided, and while at the same time while he was doing that, he thought, hey, why don't I start swinging webs too? It's dumb. I don't like it. It's a dumb costume. And I'm glad he eventually ditched it. It was just lame. But again, rant over. Let's get that rant over. That's just something I've been wanting to talk about for a little while, and I'm glad I got the chance. But anyway, back to the comic. Either way, Miles and Cindy do their best to help Peter, but even they know that their webs aren't going to be enough. Thankfully, however, that's when more help arrives in the form of Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, who comes in and immediately Venom blasts Moreland something fierce, essentially giving enough of a distraction so that Miles and Cindy can help Peter up. And what I love is that once Peter starts realizing that all these different Spider people are here, combined with all the portals in Moreland, he's realizing, oh shit, we're doing Spider-Verse again, aren't we? Although Cindy is still more concerned that seeing Moreland there, because again, part of her backstory is that she got thrown in a bunker for half of her life because she was hiding from this asshole. But, well, and so seeing him here, it's starting to kind of rile her up a little, not helped by the fact that the spider wasps are still swarming around the area, and one of them even manages to sting Cindy. As such, she eventually just gets fed up as she jumps at Moreland with the intent of kicking his ass something fierce, with Miles going in to help as well because, well, he thinks that Cindy and Jessica could use some backup. However, as they're continually doing this, another portal scene opens up, and it looks like the Spideys seemingly get some backup. In this case, from this portal comes Spider-Man Noir. Yeah, we'll talk about him in a minute. We'll talk about that in a minute. But either way, the Spideys aren't going to complain because, hey, it's more backup. This should help. This should help them out, right? Well, Spider-Man Noir says that things aren't exactly what they seem. As while Peter says it's okay, it's cool to have more friends around. Basically, he says that no one else is showing up, and just as Spider-Man Noir is ready to jump into the fray, one of the spider wasps manages to sting Peter, which throughout all this, he thinks that something seems a little off, but after the sting, he notices something. Spider-Man Noir isn't just carrying his standard handgun. He's carrying a knife, specifically that sacrificial knife that that Moreland and the Inheritors wanted to use for their ritual, where they attempted to stop any future spider totems from appearing. And we see Noir carry the knife as he rushes at Jessica, holds her head in place, and then stabs her right in the gut. And it's a shocking moment. However, as Noir pulls the knife out, there's no blood. There's not even a wound, which is surprising to everyone until Noir reveals what he really did. He didn't stab her with the knife, he severed her. Severed her from the web of life and destiny. And as a result, from the place that Jessica was stabbed, we see her body starting to unravel. So, remember back in Spider-Verse when I mentioned how the Master Weaver wound up snipping one of the threads of his web and caused the mother of the Inheritors to unweave and fade away? Yeah, that's kind of what's happening to Jessica here, as bit by bit her whole body is turning to web and begins unraveling, and as this is going on, she's just reacting in abstract horror as she feels herself fading away. And it's not just her that's fading away, she starts talking about how her entire life seems to be fading away. Everything she's accomplished, all she's done, fighting Hydra, marrying her husband, having her son, which in her last moment she's wondering what the hell's going to happen to her son if everything she's done is being undone. What's going to happen to her son? But ultimately the cries fall on deaf ears as she fades away, all that remains of her now being a pile of webs. As such, immediately the assorted Spideys, minus Noir, wonder what the hell's going on, until Moreland comes in and decks Noir right in the face. As such, Moreland finally rips the webbing off his mouth and tells the Spideys why he's really here. He's not here to fight them this time. He's here to help them. He was the big gun that Spider UK sent to get Peter, because it turns out it turns out that Mashath was kind of a bigger threat than the Inheritors. And yep, if you haven't put it together already, Spider-Man Noir is on her side. After all, we did see him get stung in issue 1 of the last Edge of Spider-Verse miniseries, and sure enough, we start seeing the Wasp variant come out as after he reorients himself after Moreland decks him, we see that the lower half of his jaw opens up into a set of mandibles now, which it looks even creepier, and I like that we can see the eye holes of his mask now look a lot more they look more like a wasp's eyes. And so sure enough, Noir stands ready as a bunch of portals open up behind him, and basically as the Spideys are all watching this, another one of the wasps comes in and stings Miles, and Noir tells them all that it's all over now, that they've all been stung, so they have two choices. They can either join Noir or they'll get killed. Of course, none of the Spideys want to do all this, and so Noir says that's fine, that's what they all said. At which point the comic ends as we see figures coming through the portal, and Noir tells Peter, hey, remember when I said you didn't have any friends? I lied. They're all still here. They're just your enemies now. And so the last panel of the comic shows us waspified variants of the MC2 Spider-Girl Spider-Gwen, and Spider-Punk. All of them, well, looking just as monstrous as Spider-Man Noir did, which, let me see if I can find that panel. It's a good shot. Yep, this is it. These are the Wasp variants of all of them. And if I'll give credit, again, give credit where it's due, I kind of like how the spider motif in all their costumes has now changed to a wasp motif, so I dig it. But yeah, that was issue one. That was the first part of the storyline, and my thoughts on it. Damn good start in my opinion. For starters, like again, like with other Spider-Verse stories, it does bank on you having read the lead-in material before going in. Hence why you should already be familiar with Shathra and her whole plan of converting Spideys across the multiverse into Wasp totems. So at the very least, you should be aware of that. But even if you aren't aware of even if you didn't read the build-up, I will say this, I think it actually eases you in rather well, because after all, this is a Spider-Man comic. Spider-Man is a central focus. So I like that we kind of are brought into the storyline through his point of view. From the beginning of the story, it's just Spider-Man doing his regular thing. Kicking ass, fighting bad guys, stopping a robbery, being all friendly neighborhood with all the people who gather around to watch him. It's all nice, mushy stuff that of course you all love seeing from Spider-Man, including having him quip and mess with the robbers as he's kicking their asses. But on top of that, the way they integrate into this portion that is the end of the Spider-Verse story, I love. It's fun. It's actually legitimately fun, and I love that I love just how much. I just love how serious it really feels. Like from when you see Shathra as she's standing there in what's left of Loom World with Annie Mae by her side, now the nestling as she opens portals for her, and we get a sense just how dark, and we get a sense that things are very much wrong, especially when we see Shathra. The comic does tell us, hey, this is Loom World now, and considering that Loom World used to be the place where the Spideys called home in the Spider-Verse, now seeing it now be under the control of this big scary wasp lady, and seeing the pattern maker, which is supposed to be a very young spider person, just standing by her side, almost completely converted into a wasp monster, it very much makes you wonder what the hell is going on here. Made even more apparent when we cut to the unknown other universe and we see Madam Web, Spider UK, and Aranya as they talk about how they sense that Shathra has made a move on Earth 616 and that they need to act quickly. From there, things start getting even more serious as we see Shathra's wasps invade Earth 616, followed by Morlun. As immediately both of these things coinciding immediately lets you know that something weird is going on, and ultimately with Morlun's appearance, it still sets the standard that things are a lot more serious. Because after all, the inheritors are very much big deals. So seeing one just casually walk in and just smile evilly at Peter as he greets him, it immediately just gives you a sense that things aren't right. And if I can give crap to Madam Web, Aranya, and Spider UK, particularly Spider UK, it's this. Why the funkin' wagnall would they send Morlun to get Peter? I understand. They gotta pull out the big guns for this. After all, both Madam Web, Aranya, and Spider UK state that ultimately Peter is the chosen one. He's important. They need him to stay safe in order to secure a victory against Shathra. But the thing is, it's fucking Morlun. They don't explain why Morlun is on the Spidey side this time around, but regardless of his reasons, it's fucking Morlun, and every single time Peter has crossed paths with this asshole prior to this story, Morlun has made it clear that he wants Peter's head on a pike. And every time Peter has beaten him, he's only just beaten him. Just fucking barely. The first time they fought, Peter had to spike up the radiation in his bloodstream to give Morlun food poisoning when he tried feasting on his life force. The second time, Morlun nearly killed Peter, and if it wasn't for the fact that Peter was bonding with the other, he wouldn't have been able to beat Morlun at all. The third time he was doing it, he brought in his family, and Peter had to team up with a whole horde of spider people just to take him and his family down. And the fourth time they duked it out, Peter barely survived and only beat Morlun by putting him full of tranquilizers. My point is this. Moreland and Peter have a very, very hectic relationship, and even if he was going to meet with Peter as a friend, Peter's response is very much justified. There is no reason for him to suspect that Moreland is here to make friends, so to speak. And considering just how powerful Moreland is, of course Peter would immediately go on the offensive and start trying to kick his ass. Wouldn't you? I would. I would immediately think, holy shit, the guy that is who has constantly wanted to kill me and has stated that he wants nothing more than to kill me is back. I gotta kick his ass now. I'm just gonna say this. The fact that they sent Moreland in is dumb. It's dumb. I understand. He's the most powerful one they have there, but considering his and Peter's relationship, I feel like maybe he should have had an entourage with him at the very least. So, yeah, I'm gonna call that a problem. I'm going to call that a problem. Although, to be fair, you could make the argument that because of all these spider wasps there and how in Edge of Spider-Verse we saw how wasp stings have been converting spider totems, maybe they didn't want to risk anybody, which I think that's the argument. But again, I still feel like there are better ways they could have sent Moreland than the way they did. So I'm going to call that a So I'm going to call that a flub on the Spider Army's side of things. But again, like I said, the story still has ways of bringing you into the whole fray by little by little introducing Peter to more of the stuff, like when Peter starts getting assistance from the other spiders of Earth 616 to duke it out with Moreland, and likewise as things continue getting more having things have things get more hectic with the addition of Spider-Man Noir entering the fray. Which, yeah, if you have read Edge of Spider-Verse, you know that Spider-Man Noir is not a good guy at the moment. But the thing is, Peter and the other Spideys of 616 don't know this, and so when Noir arrives, they think that he's on their side. And I love how they reveal in the story that Noir is not helping them this time around. As at first he comes across it looks like he's just coming in to give them reinforcements. After all, he's still another Spider-Man, and so he can do some good, right? But then after Peter gets stung by a spider wasp himself, that's when things immediately take another shift in tone as we see Spider-Man Noir pull out the sacrificial knife and stab Jessica Drew. As that's immediately a very shocking moment, as once again it helps establish one very important thing. Anyone can go. And the thing is, Jessica Drew is a lot more of an important figure when it comes to the whole Spider-Man mythos. After all, she is a big she's the original Spider-Woman. Yes, she's left the title every once in a while, but she's laid claim to it again, and she's kept the title for years, even so much so that she's actually reverted back to her original costume, which kind of sucks. I liked the costume that she had after the first Spider-Verse storyline, but whatever, tradition and all that crap. But again, it's still really shocking, and the fact that you see her that you just see her start to unweave right there on the scene, it's a horrifying sight, especially as she can feel how everything's going on, how she's little by little unweaving, and the way they express it, the way they showcase it, really really feels horrifying because the way she's describing it, it's not just that she's disappearing. She's literally everything that she is or was is being undone. Every one of her past victories, everything that she's ever done in her life as Spider-Woman, it's all fading away. And it's actually kind of horrifying that the bad guys have access to such a cosmic level weapon like this knife, and how they're able to use it to kill Spideys, which I guess makes sense that it could use that. I mean, the thing is, we have seen this knife in previous Spider-Verse stories. After all, in the original Spider-Verse, this was the knife that the Inheritors wanted to use to draw the blood of the Bride, and the Scion, so they could, stop all future Spider people from ever existing. Which, I guess you could still use it as a knife, because in this case, it was being used to just outright stab someone. But whereas before, it was actually just used to cut blood. It was actually just used to draw blood. And on top of that, maybe when Benji was stabbed with it, maybe it would have just caused him to be completely erased at all, since he was the youngest spider totem in the multiverse, hence why he was the Scion. So I'll let this slide. I'll let it slide. After all, it's meant to be like a sacrificial knife, and even when Anya looked at it during Spider-Verse, she noticed that it had all these weird markings on it that told the prophecies of the Web and Life and Destiny and all that crap. So again, willing to let it slide this time around. So whatever. So yeah, I'm willing to let it slide that maybe the knife also always had this ability. We just never saw it in action. So again, But again, yeah, still horrifying sight, exemplified by the fact that we see Moreland now defending Peter from Spider-Man Noir and letting the Spideys know that he's on their side, just as we see more waspified variants of Spidey coming through in the form of Mayday Parker, Hobie Brown, and Gwen Stacy. This immediately creates another tone shift as we see that things are very much more bad than we realize. As whatever this threat is, it's something so big that even Moreland is helping out the Spideys. And with how Shathra talked about how Peter has no allies outside of Earth 616, and how Spider-Man Noir mentions how all of Peter's friends are now enemies, followed up by the fact that we see these 3 Spidey variants coming through, and all are also transformed into Wasp totems. It creates a sense of immediately just lets you know that just how serious this thing is, because right from the get-go, danger is afoot, and everyone that Peter could have considered an ally in previous stories is now potentially an enemy. Not everyone, mind you, as he still has allies on Earth 616, but seeing Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Punk, MC2 Spider-Girl, and Spider-Gwen all appearing, and all of them transformed into Wasp totems too, on all of them clearly having ill intent towards Peter, it's very much a holy shit kind of moment, and it does actually grab your interest and makes you want to see where things go from here. So, on the whole, I do think this is a good beginning to End of the Spider-Verse, and I think it does help to set the tone for what we're going to be expecting later. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. Overall, good start. Maybe some minor fluff. Maybe kind of a minor thing with the Spider Army, with them sending Moreland in without any context or clues. But ultimately, still an enjoyable beginning. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson. I hope to see you on Tuesdays. We look at the next part of the storyline. So until then, I hope you have a good day. Take care.